Here again to talk with you about issues related to having a prepared pantry and suggestions for pantry management. I had a really important issue that I wanted to talk to you about today. Today's April 1st, and no, this video is not an April Fool. That means it's the beginning of the month. And there are an awful lot of people out there for whom this is the day when they get their checks and they can finally go grocery shopping. And one of the things that we need to remember is that for people who are on WIC and for people who are on supplemental nutrition programs, food stamps, they are frequently very limited in terms of what they are allowed to buy. Their WIC, for example, they're only allowed to buy if the label has WIC on it. And unfortunately, because those products tend to be the less expensive products, right now lots of people are buying them and they're buying more than they need in the immediate moment. And that means that they're creating a shortage for people who had to wait till now to go grocery shopping and who now have almost nothing on the shelves that they can buy. So part of the reason that I wanted to talk about that is because the truth of the matter is, a lot of people are talking about there's no food at the grocery store, the grocery stores are running out. There is enough food. There is enough food in this country, and the grocery stores may be juggling at the moment to keep up with supply and demand, but it's not because there's no food. It's in part because people are buying more in a panicked response to the situation. I've been doing some research over the last few days, and one of the things that I discovered is that unfortunately, it seems when we're under stress, one of the things we do is look for ways to control it. And one of the ways we control it is perhaps by overbuying at the grocery store. And so there are a lot of people who are buying more than they need or more than they even know what to do with. And that's leaving people who need it in a more challenging or more difficult situation. So I wanted to share a couple of thoughts about how to stock your pantry and ask you, especially over the next 4 or 5 days, to be kind about how much you buy and about what you buy. And then I also want to remind you that because we currently have a presidential order that states that the current situation is going to continue at least through April 30th, that means we're going to be looking at doing the same thing again next month when May rolls around. So in terms of the grocery stores no longer stock the way they used to decades ago. I mean, decades ago, supply lines were very different. They didn't have access to as much. It wasn't as immediate. And so they, aside from fresh produce, they had to carry a much larger inventory than they do now. Now they carry a much smaller inventory, and their turnaround, their supply line tends to be much more efficient. So in terms of fresh food, the average grocery store has about 3 days worth in the grocery store. Now, one of the issues that comes up is when there is some sort of an emergency. So a couple of years ago, my family went through Hurricane Harvey, and yes, the grocery stores were empty in our area, but everybody outside of our area was fine, and the grocery store chains were able to divert and resupply from their supply lines to get to the area that was affected. And this happens all the time. If there's a fire, an earthquake, a tornado, a blizzard, whatever, yes, the grocery stores are empty for just a little bit, but then they reposition and they're able to manage it. What nobody ever planned was for the entire country to be under a very difficult situation requiring a massive overhaul. Plus, there is potentially some challenges in logistics and getting things there. It doesn't mean that the food's not there. It just means getting it to where it needs to be is a little bit more challenging. One of the other things that happens is because we are all sort of in panic mode, we're buying more than we really need. And the object is to calmly stop and think about, A, are you going to use it? Are you buying it because you saw on some sort of newscast that said, oh, beans and rice, buy beans and rice, and then you go to the grocery store 3 days later and there's no beans and no rice? If you're not somebody who eats beans and rice, how are you going to cook that? And is your family going to eat it? Like, save it for the people who truly do eat it. If you want to try it, that's fine, but don't feel like you have to buy out the entire grocery store section. The other thing that tends to happen is because we're buying so much, we then have this stockpile that we're not quite sure what to do with. And while there are some people who believe in deep preparedness, preppers, and they'll want to have a year or more in storage, I will say that the CDC's recommendation is that most people have enough for 2 weeks. So enough food in place to feed your family for 2 weeks in the event of an emergency if you couldn't get to a grocery store. And yes, you would run out of produce and you would run out of fresh food, and that's okay because you have other things that you can eat, and so it works out. I personally feel that it is prudent to have at least a 30-day supply on hand of things that you can make. So if you have canned goods or dry goods and a way to cook them, you would want to have 30 days on hand. But to go and simply buy an excessive amount is really not a good idea. So I have a couple of ideas about how to sort of slow down this panic mode that we're looking at and help make sure that everyone around us has access to groceries and has food to feed their families. One is, if you are going to the grocery store, especially over these next few days, please, please be kind. Do not buy the things that are marked WIC. And if there are products, and I don't even know if they're marked for the supplemental nutrition program, but it tends to be the basics. Just if you can afford to spend a little bit more and leave the lower priced items for the people who are in limited financial situation, I would encourage you to please do that. That is simply human kindness and means everybody has enough. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to consider looking for ways to get grocery store delivery or at least grocery store pickup. So there are several major chains where you can go online, you can select your groceries, they do the grocery shopping for you, and they tell you when your order is going to be ready, and then you simply go, they load it into your car, and you leave and you go home, and everybody's happy. And you don't have to spend the time at the grocery store. I know a lot of people are very concerned right now about spending time with other people, especially in situations where there might be more people around. So that's certainly one way to do it. Another one, and this is the one that I'm personally using at this point, is to use online delivery. So I use Instacart, and I simply go on, I choose from I have like 6 grocery stores that I can choose from in the area, and Instacart sends out the order, they shop for me, and then they bring it to me. And yes, I tip, and yes, I pay a service charge, and it's okay because it is saving me time and exposure, and it's also making life a little bit easier. One other thought actually about the Instacart that I like, and I'm pretty sure this probably applies to the pickup as well. If the grocery store doesn't have what I need, they simply don't charge me for it. But I don't have to go running around to 5 different grocery stores to find it. I either decide I'm going to do without it, or I see if I can get it at another store. I also want to say that we really need to only be buying the essentials. We need to just be buying what we need. Do your menu planning, figure out what you need to make sure you have enough for the next few weeks. At this point, my family and I are trying to only buy those things fresh that we have to have. Milk for my husband's coffee, eggs because we like them, produce because I believe in eating fresh produce, but we are reasonably set for everything else. And I encourage people to try to get to that point, but to not overbuy, to not overconsume, because we really want to make sure that we're having enough for everybody. And I also want to remind you that psychology studies have shown that when we're more stressed, we buy more. It's seen as a type of control. It's seen as a way to make sure that we are the ones who are managing our environment, even though that may be something beyond our control. So when you find yourself getting caught up in this gotta buy, or considering buying 10 of something, take a breath, stop for a second, think about if you really need it, and then think about if there's somebody else who needs it also. We're all in this together. We all need to support each other. So let's be kind and make sure that we're all fed. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, if you leave them down below, I will answer as soon as I can get to it. And I appreciate your tuning in. Thanks, folks. Take care. Bye.